Welcome to the Dragon Puppet Workshop for Croon and Og. Okay, we've provided some templates for you to download and which you can use to build your puppet. So once you've got your template printed out, we'll fold it and we'll start adding some designs. There's a line indicating where you need to do your fold. We always do our drawing if we want to add any patterns or markings, or if we want to add colour, do that before we start cutting everything out, because once everything's cut out it becomes much more fiddly. Well, I realised I didn't have to fold this first, and it may even have been easier if I hadn't, but that doesn't really matter. The important thing is that you do any kind of design or embellishment, any drawing on it before you start cutting out. Okay, and always put the lids back on your pens. So it's time to start cutting out. Now when you do this, don't worry about getting close to the lines. In fact, you don't want to go right up to them because we want to see the lines when the puppet's finished. So it's good if you have a little margin around them. I always start out with big shapes. I hold the large piece and cut off all the small little fiddly bits, rather than doing it the other way around, which I've often seen people do. So you want to take your time and be careful when using the scissors. It's probably better to use round ones as I'm using here. Make sure you don't cut your fingers. So this is a bit like drawing with scissors really, where we're moving around the line. It's a little bit fiddly, but it's really good for your hand-to-eye coordination. So now we're going to cut out all the other shapes. So do the same with the tail. Big shapes, then the little pieces. Try and keep all of your offcuts to one side so they don't get muddled up with the bits that you want to keep. And you see here I'm kind of rotating the tail and the head to make it easier for me to cut out the difficult shapes. If you need help from an adult, ask, especially the younger ones among you. If you need a little bit of help with some of the more tricky bits, ask. But this is really good practice, and you can print off a few templates so you can have a few goes. So there's some extra little shapes on the template, and you can use those for the body. That's what I did. Or you could use them to add to the beard or add to the tail. You could add some of your own shapes. There's no reason you have to stick to what's on the template. So now we're ready for the body, and we're going to cut off the excess paper first. We'll fold in half where it says to fold in half, and then cut along the cut line. We don't have to fold it first, but if we don't, then we'll have to cut twice instead of once. So now we'll add some personal detail or patterns. And again, add colour now if you want to add colour. I really like black and white, so I stuck with that. Now I drew dragon scales on mine. You could draw zigzags, you could draw dots, you could draw any sort of pattern that you like. So once you've done all your patterns, it's time to glue the sides together. I'll rub my hands, make sure I don't get any glue off that might have stuck to them. It's time to do some zigzag folding because we want this to be an articulated puppet. So I make the folds about 2 fingers width apart. That's an easy measurement, you don't need rulers or anything, just your 2 fingers. Then we're ready to start attaching the body parts. And make sure your scales are flowing in the right direction. Once I made a dragon and I had the scales going the wrong way. It's very embarrassing. So now you might want to trim the body before you attach the tail, because the tail is quite small in relation to the width of the body. But we need the body to be wide, so the puppet will be quite strong. Now when I'm attaching those little parts to my body, I'm going to make sure that they're the right way as well. So So it's fine on one side, but when I flip it over, I have to make sure that I use the correct pieces. Now there's one more important thing that we need to do before we can start sticking this whole thing together. We need to attach a stick at each end of our puppet. Now I use these kind of little lolly type sticks. If you haven't got those, you could try chopsticks or kebab skewers. You could even use pencils. There's no reason you have to use precisely what I've used. I use the scissors to kind of prod down things that I've glued. Finally, we're ready to stick everything together. So it's a bit like a sandwich. You're going to sandwich the body with the tail. And make sure you stick over the end of that stick as well. Now we're ready to play with our fabulous new puppet. So I hope you enjoy making yours and have lots of fun playing with it afterwards.